This is Mars conjunct Chiron in Synastry. And this is my Synastry series. So it's interesting. I have found that most people use fear, pain, and their internal trauma to justify avoiding a relationship. And then there are others who use their pain triggers and traumas to inflict upon others with unconscious intent to project what's hurting on the inside outwardly. In such a case, those on the receiving end of a hurt person trying to hurt you, you are in fact a victim. The theme of this synastry combination makes things difficult in determining who the victim is amongst the two individuals. The question remains, is the Chiron person the one inflicting and projecting their internal pain upon the Mars person, or is the Mars person triggering the Chiron person and or the source of the pain? This is to be determined if at all possible. If you're into tarot, the Synastry conjunction is very similar to the Nine of Wands card, the wounded warrior, except the word wounded is applicable towards the Chiron person and the warrior is the Mars person. Collectively, they are wounded warriors for being together and possibly warriors for fighting against each other. This is not a Bonnie and Clyde Synastry combo, so let's be very clear. However, things become unclear very quickly because is the Chiron person wounded because of the Mars person, or is the Chiron person already wounded and the Mars person just came in to inflict more pain to an already open wound? Does the Chiron person project their wounding, trauma, and triggers onto the Mars person? And if so, does the Mars person become the Chiron person? Who is the strongest one in the synastry, the Mars or the Chiron person? With Mars being about action and Chiron being about injuries, both the Mars and Chiron person must experience this to understand it. Has any one of you been in a narcissistic relationship or heard about one? For those in that kind of relationship, you know the pain and suffering caused by the narcissist. However, whenever you try to explain what you're going through in addition to the true character of the narcissist, most initially do not believe you. This is what I mean by having to experience the synastry to genuinely understand it. Just like someone who is not being abused covertly, needing to experience what you have to finally understand and believe you. This synastry presents so many questions that neither person will be able to answer. With conjunctions and oppositions in astrology and energetically, it's hard to determine the beginning from the end, the cause and the effect, which is first, but I digress. From experience, the Chiron person is the one who is already hurt, triggered, angry, and mad. Now, when I think about warriors or fighters due to the Mars's influence, I cannot say real warriors or fighters go after weak prey or opponents. They want to fight the best of the best in most cases. Therefore, the Chiron person is more likely to try to get the Mars person's attention, especially in the beginning. The Mars person represents the Chiron person without being hurt, bruised, and beat up. It's kind of like a parent who is now a Chiron, worn down, but aware of the life cycles, and a child who is the Mars, young, abundant in energy, and hasn't experienced life yet. When we get older, we become more reserved, pessimistic, and unimpressed with a lot of things that we were once into when we were younger and didn't have this or that experience. When we are older, we look down on younger folk and judge them harshly or see ourselves in them. Seeing ourselves in others is a projection. Back to my initial point, the Chiron person is already hurt, triggered, insecure, and or suffering to some extent. When we are in pain, etc., it's very difficult to detach from that pain, to see people, places, and things as they truly are. Therefore, the Chiron person may look upon the Mars person as a walking trigger. Chiron will be attracted towards the Mars person. However, that infatuation will disappear just as quick as it came, no pun intended. To reiterate, the only reason the Chiron person is attracted towards the Mars person is because the Chiron person sees a healthier, happier, and whatever they wish to be or once was in the Mars person. Soon, the Mars person may or may not intentionally trigger the Chiron person furthermore. Now, if the Mars person appears to be strong and in their Mars placement glory, the Chiron person can and will eventually make the Mars person a Chiron person, like an energy exchange. It's interesting because the Chiron person has a lot, if not all, the power in this synastry. The Chiron person can make or break the Mars person and or use the Mars person to get well, get stronger, or to get healthier. Ultimately, the Chiron person can become the person that they've always wanted to be with the inspiration and energy emitted from the Mars person. But sadly, that rarely happens. Instead, the Chiron person will project, and over time, the Mars person will morph into the Chiron person. The Mars person may at some point have been confident, strong, happy, sexual, athletic, or whatever, but then stops being all of that because the emotional drainage, guilt, or demands from the Chiron person. The Mars person may fall off when dealing with an unhealthy Chiron person, and granted, The mythology surrounding Chiron reveals Chiron never healing. So when I say an unhealthy Chiron, I mean someone who is not actively trying to heal or better themselves despite what life has thrown and concluded with pain, but I digress. Have you ever been in physical pain? It changes your reality, thoughts, movements, and moods significantly. That's the power of the Chiron person. They can really hurt the Mars person in the same ways that they themselves have been personally hurt. Example, if the Chiron person has been cheated on and it has caused internal wounding like insecurity, depression, and profound trust issues, what will then happen if Chiron comes into contact with the Mars person? All of a sudden, the Chiron person can only see the Mars person as a possible cheater, liar, and a dog because of their past. Then we start to see the Chiron person treating the Mars person in such a way that isn't deserved. If the Mars person is strong, eventually the Chiron person can wear them down. When the Mars person becomes worn down and starts to internalize the Chiron person's projected pain, you will observe the Mars person become a shell of a person. When this occurs, somehow the Chiron person gets a false sense of feeling better, strong, confident, and whatever else. This is the energy exchange that I was speaking on earlier. The famous quote, hurt people, but the tables always turn. The Mars person may be a bully and can sense weakness or pain in the Chiron person. Regardless, the Chiron person is fucked, okay? But with the tables turning, the Mars person is like an animal who can sense weakness, pain, and fear. Some predators like dead, weak animals because it makes for an easy kill. With that being said, the Mars person may be the narcissist who delights and gets off on inflicting more pain in the Chiron person's life. If the tables turn, the Mars person has all the power in this synastry because the Chiron person is too broken or consumed by what life and people did to them that they really can't realize how powerful they are. All this unknown power is then given to the Mars person who will abuse it or help the Chiron person rediscover their power. As with anything, but specifically oppositions and conjunctions, it's very hard to tell. The Mars person can play the role of a therapist, the demon, or a coach. The Chiron person can play the role of a student, victim, or abuser. Let's say, for example, the Mars person is aware that their Chiron person is insecure about their appearance or any kind of weight gain. The Mars person will either uplift the Chiron person by helping them meal prep, becoming a gym accountability buddy or a cheerleader, etc., or the Mars person can use that insecurity to start cheating or develop blatant wandering eyes, or in arguments say things that would make the Chiron person more insecure and or threatened that they may lose their Mars person. This creates dependency, which isn't good, but also it creates desperation. Now, the Chiron person in a negative sense can gaslight the Mars person in addition to making them weak and self-destructive over time. The pain the Chiron person hoards within will then be projected upon the Mars person to fight, and with fights, there are losses. The Mars person may develop the same coping mechanisms of the Chiron person, which isn't good, and this is the beginning of the end for the Mars person. Now, due to human nature, observations, and experience, most people are toxic. Therefore, I conclude that this isn't a synastry aspect that is compatible. I find it to be more damaging, codependent, and abusive, but to each his own. And this is my interpretation of Mars conjuncting Chiron in synastry.